I used to joke with friends who were supervisors, like, you have the easiest job in the world. Like, these people want to do their work. But leadership in that realm, what I saw was taking those willing and simply providing resources, occasionally a nudge. But if somebody is saying, I want to run up that hill, and that's what you want them to do, why would you spend any time talking with them about it or trying to convince them? They're going in that direction. And I'm thinking, let me get you water. Let me get you good shoes, good backpack, whatever it is. And so leadership is getting the best out of well-intended people that are going in that direction already. It can be easy in law enforcement to say, I've got it. I know what's right. This is right. That's wrong. Or you can say, I've experienced a lot and I've seen a lot. Let me now bring some empathy and understanding. And if you want to fight, we can still fight. I can still do that. I can still put the handcuffs on you, but I'm probably going to do a better job investigating you and then breaking through to you when that interrogation comes.
As a leader, manager, can you honestly say you understand your people? How well do you know them? When was the last time you took the time to ask them questions about themselves? It's a theme we discuss often on Leading with Integrity. This idea, this concept, this practice that great leaders always follow, which is getting to know their people, understanding their strengths, weaknesses, what's going on in their lives, the challenges they're facing, and how you can best support them. And today we are going to see why it is so important, not just when everything is going fine, but also when times are tough and the circumstances may be extreme. My guest today is Eric Robinson. He is here to share his unique journey from Christian ministry to a 24-year FBI career, including 15 years as a SWAT operator. The conversation will include the lessons he's learned on leadership, understanding human nature, and why diversity of thought is so important. We'll also discuss his upcoming book and some of the insights that he's gained on leadership, management, work, life from the high-stakes, high-stress world of law enforcement in the US. Definitely a unique guest this week with some really interesting and useful experiences and lessons to share with us, so do stick around. As always, check those show notes for links on how to learn more about Eric and to get a copy of his book. And if you're listening because you are one of those technical leaders who has been promoted because of what you know and then pretty much abandoned to your own devices, left to figure out this leadership thing all on your own, then you're in the right place. This is the podcast for you. And if you want to go deeper, please also come and check out my Integrity Leaders community. It's an online community. It's a place that is designed to give emerging technical leaders like you some real-world guidance, practical tools, and a peer community so you can lead with confidence instead of guessing your way through it or feeling alone in your leadership journey. To learn more about that, the website is leadingwithintegrity.co.uk. It's on the screen if you're watching the video. It's also in the show notes, as is my LinkedIn profile. So if you have any questions or you want to talk more about it once you visited the website or before you sign up, do please feel free to get in touch. Always happy to hear from a listener or a viewer. Well, that's enough from me. Let's get Eric on the show, and I hope you enjoy this week's conversation.
Welcome to the Leading with Integrity podcast. Leadership talk for the modern manager. With your host, David Hatch.
Eric, welcome to Leading with Integrity. It is great to have you on the show. Very much looking forward to hearing your story today.
Yeah, I appreciate being on, David, and I think we'll have a good chat.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, to start us off, tell everyone a bit about yourself, your career so far, what you do today, why you do it, etc.
My career was 24 years in the FBI. I started out in Chicago, Illinois. I worked drug cartels, gangs, and public corruption, moved to the Cleveland division, Toledo, Ohio, where I worked organized crime, crimes against children, financial crimes, and then national security with human intelligence mixed in there. I spent 15 years as a SWAT operator in the two divisions and maybe 10 years as a firearms instructor and tactical instructor. And what makes my story a little more appealing than just having a guy who can talk about FBI adventures is that prior to joining the FBI, I spent 12 years in Christian ministry. I left the pulpit of the Baptist church to join the FBI, where I preached my last sermon in our church in Western New York on Easter Sunday, 2002. I was in the FBI Academy the next Sunday. And then the Sunday after that, I was preaching at the FBI Academy in the chapel because they didn't have a chaplain and they asked me to fill in.
Okay. Right. Well, we'll talk about that transition in a minute, but I'm going to ask you first. I mean, is that typical for an FBI career? I mean, that feels like a lot of different specialisms in one career. I mean, is that normal or?
Oh, as far as what I did, it's a little abnormal. So if an agent wants to move to different squads, work different violations, they can always put in for that. I just happened to be in a situation where the drug squad was dissolved. I've worked 2 other squads in Chicago and then transferred. So naturally, I'm going to be on that squad. Worked organized crime. The leader of the Crimes Against Children Task Force went to D.C. for a couple of years, so I filled in for him. He came back, so now I'm placed somewhere else. So once I got into something, I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm in a groove. Then I got bumped to something else, but it gave me a bit of a varied view of the different violations. And as for SWAT and firearms, those are ancillary jobs. So while I'm investigating cases, now I'm preparing for a SWAT operation on this day, or I'm going to training. So it just would add to what's on my schedule, not take me away from investigations.
Okay. Yeah. So we probably don't get the real picture from all the TV shows then, where one person stays in the same job for like 40 years.
Well, and they can. I mean, I've got a colleague who worked drug cases his whole 25-year career. I wouldn't want to do that, but I think for him, he knows how to do it. And so he just puts it in the machine and makes cases.
Yeah, I can see, especially with some of those specialisms, I can see him not wanting to do that for too long. I can see that having a bit of a toll.
Yeah, working crimes against children is definitely one of those. It's rewarding, but the things that you see and get involved in are unappetizing. So that's the kind of thing you might not want to do for too long. I didn't think I would like doing financial crimes, but it was my favorite because it was like working a crossword puzzle. So more challenging in some ways. Working drugs, I sell you drugs. I'm a drug dealer. That's pretty much it. You just got to find somebody who can buy the drugs. Maybe we did wiretaps too, so those are interesting. But in the financial crimes, there's just so much more of seeing how the money moves and people's motivations that you have to prove.
I was about to ask you what your favorite was, and I never would have guessed that answer, I have to say.
It was when the most significant case I worked, the longest was a financial case. And I didn't think I would like it either because our instructor in the academy was boring and did a terrible job of presenting. So I thought, I don't want to do that. But getting into it, it was interesting for me because I'm looking at people who are like me, but they're not. Working gangs, okay, these people are very different. I'm having to learn them. Working national security in many ways, like if I'm working international terrorists, obviously they have a lot of cultural differences. The domestic terrorists, okay, now we're getting into it where they were even, they're white supremacists, so they look like me, and almost all of them grew up in church too. They just took that Christian ideal to a bastardized extreme. So that was interesting as well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure what other questions to ask that you're allowed to answer. Like, I mean, so let's go back to like the beginning of that career then. I mean, that as you say, it's quite a unique journey, I imagine, going from a pastor to a SWAT operator, an FBI agent, all that thing. So, I mean, the first question really is, tell us a bit more about that journey, and then also what prompted such a radical career change.
Yeah, the short answer to what prompted it is I needed to find a job with less stress. And the longer answer is I enjoyed ministry. I feel like I did it well. Our church that we planted was successful. I based it upon grace. So I told the core group that we started the church with, if we're going to make a mistake, let's err on the side of grace and let God judge us for being too welcoming. And I gave them what I called a flinch test. Say, hey, look, I know you grew up in a Baptist church and those are very conservative, but if someone comes and they're not wearing church clothes, if you can smell alcohol in their breath, piercings, tattoos, interracial, homosexual couples, can you say welcome? And there's no look on your face of, I'm glad you're here, but I'm secretly judging you. And that was great. People were coming in, lives were being changed. But I found myself increasingly as I moved through ministry incapable of separating myself from other people's problems. And it was nothing special. Thousands of other men and women have been able to do that. I lacked that capacity. And that brought stress-related headaches at the end of my career every single day for 2 years. And I came to a place where clearly my body was talking to me and trying to nudge me with the headaches. And I had to fear that if it didn't get my attention with the headaches, what is it? What's next? The body's going to say, you're not listening. So here's a stroke. And I just had to pick something, just a new career path. And I applied for 2 jobs. One I was overqualified for and one I was underqualified for. And I got this one. I didn't think I was necessarily fit to be an FBI agent, but my wife's way out of my league. If you don't ask the pretty girls out, they're not going to go out with you. So I took a swing with the FBI. My background had been in studying Islam and working with Muslims with the intention to be a missionary to Muslim countries. My application was in process when 9/11 hit, and I assume that played a factor in that we had an Al-Qaeda problem. This fellow knows how to work with Muslims. Let's bring him on board. And then if you recall back, of course, as the government works, this guy who knows Muslims gets placed in a drug squad and works criminal offenses for 15 years.
I have to say, and you probably saw my eyebrows go up when you said I needed a less stressful job. I don't think many people would have seen that going from like preaching effectively to, law enforcement, firearms, all that sort of thing. I mean, one of those feels a lot more stressful than the other from the outside.
Yeah, but for me, it was less stressful. You come to me and say, hey, my wife's leaving me. My kid has a drug habit. I'm depressed. That doesn't go away when we're done talking. Like that's still something now. I'm a pastor, so I'm meant to care for you. In the FBI, those issues, like I would see terrible things. We'd work with victims, but not only was it not my job to now care for them, it would be inappropriate. And so there were forced boundaries where I do my job, I arrest this guy, and I, hopefully put these victims in a good place. Now I move on to the next bad guy. And so there's completion, there's satisfaction in the church. It's not like you come to me and I go, great, now you're perfect and holy. I can move on to the next guy. There were always issues. And for whatever reason, I'm just such a nice guy. I couldn't let go of these.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, it's a sign that you care though, which I think it is to your credit. So then my follow-up question was going to be, did you not find a similar problem in the new job, like getting too attached to cases or to victims or feeling like you need to always do a bit more? Or was that a benefit? I don't know.
Well, so the empathy or the caring part, played a positive role in my law enforcement work. But as I said, I was forced to not be able to care. It wasn't my place. It would have been wrong for me to start reaching out and doing beyond what I did in law enforcement. And it came to a place where I could find satisfaction in just being a good agent. As a pastor, it's admittedly largely self-imposed. I had to wear a mask. I had to be perfect, had to have the answers, but also is largely self-imposed because there's a kernel of that's true, where you can't just make mistakes, be bawdy, get seen drinking alcohol, that type of thing. So again, I probably overemphasize it, but in the FBI, I just had to be a good agent and do my job, and was fully accepted.
Well, fair enough. It does seem like that would be quite a difficult adjustment at the beginning, though. But I guess if it's what you were looking for, and I suppose the training helps, doesn't it?
It does. I didn't know that that's something I was looking for. I just knew I had to escape the stress. And the day I got accepted in the FBI, there was still a process to take place. That day, the headache stopped. And so that was a pretty good cue to me that, okay, I'm making the right decision. And it was the ministry. It wasn't just me having some tumor nobody could find.
That's good to know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I had a sort of similar experience with the headache thing, actually, in a totally different and far lower stakes environment. But you get into that position, don't you, where you're stressing out about your job for whatever reason. So for me, it was the Sunday night headache every week without fail. I left that job and literally overnight didn't have another headache again. And but it's so easy to ignore. Oh, it's just a headache. I'll carry on.
Right. And you come to accept that pain as part of your life. But the tipping point was when I'd been going through this. As a pastor, I didn't make much money. That's fine. My wife was working. The town we were in didn't have a lot of career opportunities, but okay, she's working too. We get pregnant. There goes our health care with her job on top of her income. And I thought, oh my gosh, I can't, on top of everything, now I can't even afford to pay for the family. And that was the decision point of, okay, your hand's getting forced here. You're not going to be able to, even financially survive.
Yeah. It's a sadly familiar story, actually, the whole stress aspect of that. And I think the lesson there that we all need to take away is don't ignore things like that. It might seem small for now, but you never know where it's going to end up.
Yeah, I agree. Early, I was fairly young. I was early 30s, and now I'm in my late 50s. Well, now I have experience. Now I've been through those types of things multiple times, different manners. Now there's some wisdom of, hey, stop ignoring that. This injury that you have, stop pushing through it. Now I'm smarter from experience, having made mistakes along the way.
It's a very male thing as well, isn't it? I find ignore and overcome. Don't see the doctor. No, we don't do that. Then they might actually find something wrong with me. It's better off if it's just don't know what it is. Then there's nothing wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, right. So moving on from that nice tangent, let's go back to your time as an FBI agent. What do you think, or what would you say from your experience? What are the unique qualities that you would say make a good FBI agent?
So when I came into the FBI Academy, I'm with former cops, military, even some folks who had been in the FBI as support staff. And, this is me trying to catch up, not just understanding what law enforcement is, but this huge entity of the FBI. I'd never handled a gun before. I'm skipping rounds off the pavement, trying to pick these things up. And I did well. I'm smart enough to go through that training, and it wasn't too tough. But that deficit turned into a leg up on everyone else by the time we got in the field, because I had spent 12 years learning how to interact with people. And I had practiced sitting with people, listening, being quiet, being inquisitive. making people feel safe. That's going to work with victims. That's going to work with informants, connecting with people that I may not have everything in common with. That's going to work with the criminals and many other people. So no matter what technology we have, guns, computers, legal process, eventually cases will come down at many points to person-to-person contact. So that ability to communicate for me was necessary to be a good agent. I have seen that also be proven out in people I've witnessed, colleagues I've worked with. There also needs to be a determination, like a tenacity, because FBI mandate for casework is that we work long-term enterprise investigations. So these can go on sometimes for years. And that means creativity. It means sticking with it, finding new avenues to find out not just the depth of the criminal activity, but the breadth of who all is involved. And being able to stick with a case for a long term while then also working other cases on the side. I wouldn't call it multitasking, but it's that ability to keep a focus throughout those months or even years to bring out the best results at the end. And lastly, I would say the ability to be creative and collaborate, working with colleagues. So most cases, you have a case agent, they're going to work it. They're pretty much it. Some cases will have a co-case or two, and they're working together. But when I had a case by myself, I was so often stopping by someone's desk saying, hey, what do you think about this? Lay it out, get some ideas. And part of the strength of the FBI is its diversity, not necessarily in gender or in nationality, but in taking people who come from different professional backgrounds, like pastor, like history teacher, like attorney, and we have plenty of military and law enforcement. But if everyone comes with just that cop mindset, you lose out on what someone else might bring who has just that the greater variety of experience that they can bring to say, maybe consider it this way.
What struck me there is how many of the things you've just listed would also apply to good leadership. Now, obviously, I'm biased and everything to me is about leadership because that's why I do this show. But, you know, things like working with people, the collaboration, the long-term view, I think that's quite, I guess interesting is the word, but interesting feels like a boring word. So, yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, I agree. And that plays out as true because we have a chain of command and there is deference given, people follow, but every agent has to be ready to be called on to lead, and they will at some point. So we go into this investigation. I'm interacting with my supervisor, but now I'm making calls definitively. We're doing this, we're doing that. And the Bureau, it's structured so that agents are self-starters. They are the ones carrying the weight of the case, not checking in with the boss every time. That stagnates process. So 90% of what I did, I chose myself. I'm the one saying I'm going to meet with an informant. I'm going to serve a subpoena. It's so much that. And then I'm checking in and the boss is making sure I'm, straight. But it's self-ownership. And then, somebody has to be the one who has that final decision as the chain of command goes up.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it's a wonderful point too about diversity of thought. I think without wanting to get into the politics of diversity, because we try to avoid politics in general here, not always successfully. But I think, diversity gets a lot of attention for good and bad, I think, in the leadership and management space. But I think one thing that's always struck me is that exactly the point you made earlier about like the diversity of experience, backgrounds, knowledge, and what you lose out on if you don't have that. And sadly, I don't know, inconveniently perhaps for some, those diversities of things like thought and experience and backgrounds do tend to go alongside those other kinds of diversity. And I don't think we can separate those or ignore one or the other personally. But I said I wouldn't get political, didn't I? But
No, it's not political. It's just truth. So the Bureau, if the Bureau wants to hire white men, they just say we're hiring because white guys are going to come. And so that cultural experience, that ethnic experience, that is also part of the background that's going to add diversity of thought, a perspective that I cannot have. It's not intuitive to me. I need someone else who's lived that different life to say, maybe think of it this way. And they may be wrong, but it's going to change. Oh, you know what? Not quite that, but maybe this. Yeah. I don't. Diversity has been made political. It's not. It's definitely a strength.
Yeah, I mean, I've always seen it that way. And I'm trying to think of a simple analogy. I guess for me, it's like that concept of local knowledge, right? If you're going to go and start a new arm of your business or whatever, or a new investigation, say, in somewhere you've never been before, you don't have that cultural context. You don't have the knowledge of the location or the country or the region or whatever it is. The sensible person will seek that out. They'll get that local knowledge. They'll find that diversity of thought and experience, right? And if there's other aspects to it as well, then find that. And it's just, to me, that feels like common sense. And yet so many people seem to be railing against that and politicizing it, as you say.
Unfortunately. And I think this was even an aspect that has come through as we would do, we'd have SWAT tryouts. New guys come out to the team, and our team leader would emphasize that, guys, we don't want to silo our thought. Like, we've got tactics and those are mandated, but we also want people to come in who aren't just like the guy next to you. And you don't want to go too far off because now it breaks continuity and maybe camaraderie. But when we've got this oddball or that person who doesn't quite fit what we think is definable, but they meet the standards and look like to be a good person, that was admittedly now broadening even in SWAT, where you think, whatever, man, you're just pointing guns and knocking down doors. But there are still aspects where that creativity is going to make us better, which is then going to make us safer too.
Fair enough. And hard to argue with it, you would hope.
Yes.
Okay, so what would be some of your most memorable career moments and all your craziest stories? I'm terrible for asking people in HR what their craziest stories are. I feel like it's more of a risk with your career, but I'm going to ask anyway.
Oh, so I have a buddy who's a polygrapher, and I always like talking to him because he's like, let me, he could do a podcast called Things People Should Not Have Told Me, but they did anyway, of just crazy, terrible, always sexual things. The craziest story I have is one that, based on the theme of your podcast, is wholly inappropriate. So I'll save that until we're off the air. But there's been so many, there's so many cases. When I was in ministry, I worked with a fairly homogeneous group. These people are Christ seekers, so that's the same, similar community. Nobody is like hyper rich or homeless. Some might have been, but like for the most part, I was with a homogeneous group of people. That's how I grew up, sheltered. And then I get into the FBI, and now I'm interacting with Chicago gang members, and I have to see them as more than just a gang. This is a person. Now, why are they involved? And so that exposure, not just to the idea of it, where I'm in the milieu of gang investigations, but I'm actually talking to and recruiting gang members as informants. I worked crimes against children, and at that time, our mandate was to stop sex trafficking, which was looking for pimps who were promoting teenaged girls into prostitution. Many of them were already involved in the prostitution before the pimps came. But some of the crazy things, I just think it's not so crazy as just unexpected. my partner Laura and I were trying to break through to this intractable, implacable 15-year-old girl and trying to convince her to tell us more details. We wanted to drive her around so she could point out houses where she had tricked. Now we could start working backwards and get cases on some of those guys. And she wasn't giving. But then out of the blue, as we're driving around, she says, I could use a cigarette. And I pull the car into a parking lot with my partner, Laura, who's a sweet woman. And I say, well, I don't have cigarettes, but I always have cigars. And so, as Laura's looking at me like, what are you doing? And I'm looking back with, she has sex with strange men for money. This is going to be okay. I'm smoking cigars in a parking lot with a 15-year-old prostitute, and that is not what I expected for my life. But one of my favorite stories is before I worked the crimes against children, I was in the office and I was asked to help out on a case. There was a pimp named Lucky who had been already charged, placed in jail for promoting underage prostitution, for sex trafficking, and he was reaching out to the victims to try to influence them not to testify against him. So I was asked to listen to his jail calls, which eventually evolved into all of his calls were ported to my phone. So I would be on mute and I would listen to his calls and I'm taking notes. And not only did we work that case against him influencing the witnesses, but I worked up a pill case on him where he was running pills through his family from the jail, getting them from his uncle, selling them to other people, making the connections. And I got a case. I worked up a drug case on his uncle, on his mom, on his girlfriend, and like 3 other people. And I did such a good job. My colleague says, you get to pick who you arrest. We're doing the takedown. And I said, that's easy. I want Monica, the girlfriend. So we go out to this small town in Ohio, and I stop by the police department in this small town. I say, do you have a room where we could do a post-arrest interrogation? And the sergeant says, sure. Can I ask who you're arresting? And I tell him, and he just laughs at me and says, man, that family's in this police department more than I am. There's no way she's talking to you. And I said, okay, we'll see. So we arrest Monica without incident. We bring her back to the PD. And normally when I'm doing a post-arrest interrogation, I've studied. I've got everything ready. I've got a plan of attack. And this is how I'm going to go after the subject. With Monica, it was completely different. I had about a dozen jail calls from her boyfriend. And I didn't even read her rights. I just explained who I was and asked her to listen to some calls and respond to them. And I play the first call, and it's a woman's voice. And she's talking to Lucky, her boyfriend. And they're talking about how much they love each other and can't wait till he gets out. And she says, well, that's not me. And I say, I'm sorry. Let me play you this one. And I play, it's a different woman's voice. And it's the same thing. Baby, I can't wait to be with you. And she said, that's not me either. I said, sorry. How about this one? And I play, and it's a different woman's voice. And she turns off the recorder and she says, what do you want to know? And so my normal way of like, here's my proof. You need to confess because we've got you anyway. Out the window. No point in doing that. I just had to show her that there was no value in staying faithful to her boyfriend. And we were driving back now to the office to lock her up in a different PD. And I'm on the phone with the prosecutor. And Monica says, give me the phone. She talks to the federal prosecutor and she says, I'll testify on one condition. I'm the first one on the stand. And so I knew I'd done my job well. And if you can break a subject and also have fun while doing it, that is the epitome of living in a flow state. That's the perfect life right there.
Yeah. I mean, it reminds me of that cliche about if you do what you love.
Yeah. And I got to that day. I mean, it was, there's so many bad instances, like tough times in the FBI. And if there's an opportunity to have fun and come out of it and be successful, well, now it becomes memorable.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. So slightly off topic question, but that story has kind of sparked a few memories of TV shows over the years. What would you say is like the biggest myth that you love to correct that people misunderstand as a result of all? Because I mean, law enforcement as a whole just gets so much attention in pop culture, doesn't it? What's the thing they get wrong most often that you'd love to set the record straight?
Well, so my youngest enjoys watching Criminal Minds, and she was on a binge, and she'd be watching it. So she turns it on, and then she pauses it immediately, and she says to me, "You get 5 complaints, and then you shut up." And I'd burn through those really quick. So I think I tell you this story about Monica and Lucky, and I could go into other details and tell you all these really cool, exciting parts to it. And that case took months, and I hated it. And it was terrible listening to Lucky call. He would call right before phone privileges were over, which were at 10 at night. And so at 9:55, he'd call and then go over. And I go to bed early, and I hated it. But if I pull out the exciting parts, okay, I'm going to condense this. Now this is a good story. So, you watch things, and I wouldn't want to watch a true to life FBI, case as it went, but condensing it, there are those exciting times. There are things that go on. So I think the condensing often, which brings about the untruths, is we don't have a supercomputer that we can have some goth chick type into and get, people's phone records off the bat. And so that's a subpoena process, and that's going to take a few weeks. And it probably involves me calling the phone company and arguing with them because they haven't provided it. So all that, let's just condense it to, I'll call a girl and she'll give me phone records. What's crazy is, and this brings up something that people may not think of. I mean, I was in the FBI. There are times you're like, well, where does this guy work? Like, there's no database that says where he works. And, now you got to go to tax records. Maybe you're going back to surveillance just to follow him to his job. When we had to prepare for a trial, I had to get a hold of someone from Garmin. So we needed to prove that this man providing a GPS system to a terrorist would be beneficial. And so we needed someone from Garmin to explain what a GPS does, because we need an expert. It can't just be me saying everybody knows GPS does this. And of course, it'd be useful for terrorists. Who do I call? It took me a week of phone calls. Like I'm looking up online. I'm calling Garmin's helpline, 12 calls until I finally get a person. I go, look, here's my situation. They go, okay, let me put you through the process of trying to find out just who can I talk to was, it's not fun. I'd rather watch a show where they just call up and they get a hold of somebody. But yeah, there's a long process to just about everything we do.
Yeah, I get that. I guess there's way, I see where they're coming from in terms of it's got to be entertaining or no one will watch it, but they could put in little nods of, a little flashback like 3 weeks later or something like that. So at least you have a picture of how long these things really take.
Yeah. Or like going through evidence, like, oh my gosh, especially these days, you get 3 phones, 2 computers and a tablet. And, it's just manually like scrolling like that looks like it might be pertinent. I'm going to tag that. It's days and days and weeks of monotony. And then there's, the exciting parts too, where you're getting in and, now you hit the jackpot. Now you found exactly what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a metaphor for life in there somewhere, isn't there?
Sure.
Okay. So what does working in like these high stakes, even life threatening kind of situations, what does that teach you about leadership, about life, about, I don't know, the universe? See how deep you want to go, I guess.
Yeah, let's go deep. It really broadened my understanding of humanity. Um, I didn't have a hard black and white look at things when I was a pastor, but it definitely was like Bible says so. This is right, that's wrong. I understand there, let me show grace in the gaps. And then I got to a place where that gap is really broad and I am arresting gang members, but now I'm understanding them more. Not that it excuses the violence or the drug sales or prostitution, but now it helps me do my job better and I think be a better human where I'm understanding, okay, here's where their lack of options are. I have these choices, they have these choices. I had good parents, they may not. They have a desire for belonging, so they join the gang. Oh, okay, that makes sense. They join a gang because they may need protection that I don't have a need for. So much is involved in this. Like they have a need to make money. Their tools are limited. Whereas I went to college, I went to grad school. They need money now. So there's so much that broadened my understanding of what affects humans. And it takes it from a place of topical to actual. And I found that so often to be true where when you are exposed now to the human part of this discussion topic, it makes things real and it takes it away from just a matter of debate. We can still debate it, but now I can put a name to, we're debating about Juan, we're debating about Kevin. These things now are actually humans' lives. So that was, I think, that was such a blessing to have, to be able to take that and now bring it to my life. That has been something now where as far as it goes to leadership, now I can identify more with people. Maybe I can see or be sensitive to what their needs are more than I wouldn't have otherwise. I can, whether I am in that position of administrative leadership, I could, aside from that, be a leader in discrete moments that in interacting with this squad mate, SWAT operator, I can have a place of leadership for a small piece. I wasn't in charge, but I'm helping them maybe understand, bring some of what I have gained and influence in that small matter.
I think that's a really great lesson. I mean, we talk about quite a lot on the show here about like the importance of individual context and understanding where people are coming from so you can meet them where they are. Oh, it's a bit of a cliche phrase, but you get what I mean.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much exactly what you're talking about, isn't it? And I think it's interesting that you get that kind of exposure to it and that sort of mindset from the career, even though where your job was essentially to catch these people, but in order to do that, you've got to understand them. And so that it sort of becomes a weird kind of leadership, doesn't it? So that's really interesting. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, as I said, when it comes to drug dealers, I didn't have to understand them because it's easy as you sell me drugs, you're a drug dealer. Yeah. But now if I'm going to get confessions or get into a situation that is unexpected, I'm hitting that Johari window where, oh, okay, I didn't even think about that. But if I have done the work prior, now I'm better prepared for what I don't know. And that's going to influence that. So, yeah, it can be easy in law enforcement to say, I've got it. I know what's right. This is right. That's wrong. Or you can say, I've experienced a lot and I've seen a lot. Let me now bring some empathy and understanding. And if you want to fight, we can still fight. I can still do that. I can still put the handcuffs on you, but I'm probably going to do a better job investigating you and then breaking through to you when that interrogation comes.
Nice. Yeah. So right at the beginning of the show, we talked about your career as an overview, if you like. And there was part of the question which you glossed over, which is, what are you up to today? Now, I know the answer to a point, but you're writing a book, you're about to release one, which is all about your career. So first of all, tell us a bit more about it. And then also, like, what prompted you to write it? And what do you hope people will take away from reading it?
I wrote, this is my Father's Day present. That's my backdrop, and that's the cover. It is, my book is called Irreverent: From Saving Souls to Chasing Sinners in the FBI. And I wrote it on the tail end of my career as I'm getting ready to sign off. I asked my wife, who works in marketing authors, and has for the past 14 years, I say, what should I do when I retire? And she says, well, you can write a book. And I'm like, well, that's an obvious answer. Of course, I should have expected that from you. And I sat down. My wife gives me a book from one of her clients. She goes, hey, this is how to write a book. And I read it, and it says some people just go by the seat of their pants, just start writing. And some people try to map out, get a skeleton, then start putting meat to it. And I thought, I'm going to be the seat of the pants guy. So let me try to structure the book better. So I sit down to start structuring the book, and I think, well, let me just write the first chapter. And then it went, and it flew, because these are the stories. These are the stories that are so easy to come out. And if I get on the phone, I can call a buddy and I go, hey man, I'm on a podcast. Tell this guy a great story. And he goes like, oh, okay, how about this one? And every agent has been part of so many cases where they're remarkable. For me, I was just a Baptist pastor. I'd never handled a gun. I got to do amazing things because the FBI allowed that for me. And I put in the work, but the opportunities came because of just the nature of the work and getting to see these people. So I have read many FBI memoirs and accounts, and you can read some amazing things where guys are infiltrating groups or part of these landmark investigations, or they're telling the broad story of the FBI as an institution. I think when people read my book, they'll go, wow, that's a great story. And also, I think I could do that too, because this is just how it was. I gumped my way through things. And there were many circumstances, these cases that I initiated or I got to be a part of, that just in retrospect are remarkable. They're the kind of things where agents just regularly sit down and chat and tell stories. And yet when you step back, you go, that's actually pretty cool. And so I've got plenty of them. A couple of my editors have said, yeah, there's actually too many cool stories. You're going to need to cut them down a bit. So maybe book 2 will have some of the leftovers, but there were so many things in there. And then with each investigation where I tell, hey, this is how it went, and I take out the boring parts, then I finish each chapter with an after action review, which is common to law enforcement and military, which is a consideration of what worked, how do we almost screw that up, what lessons did we take away? And all of this is from that perspective of, I was a minister, and this is how I was operating in this world.
My next question was going to be, what next? But maybe it's that second book.
It might be. So I enjoyed writing. I always have. This is, it is in many ways like when I was working as a SWAT operator, we were hitting that flow, the conditions where we were doing what we're meant to successfully at a high level, but also under pressure of threat of life. And we would tackle some difficult tactical situations, and I'd go, oh my gosh, I got goosebumps. That's amazing how without even speaking, guys knew their places and could do that. So I miss that. I miss that buzz. I miss that high. And writing now can, in a much less life-threatening manner, replace that to a degree of getting to type and say, oh, this is enjoyable, and it's pushing up against the difficulty of being able to express yourself, so I can hit that flow when writing now, which is an old man way of saying I used to be a SWAT guy and now I can't get that anymore.
Well, I mean, there's always extreme sports, right? You could.
I break too easily.
Maybe combine the two, like write a chapter while skiing downhill or something.
That sounds like a real disaster waiting to happen.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be a good story, though.
Yes. Yeah. There you go.
Awesome. Right, Eric, we've nearly run out of time. It's been flying as it always does. I do have a few more general leadership questions for you, and I think there's already some great lessons from the stories you've shared with us. So let's start with this one, because I think this maybe we haven't really talked about. What do you think is the biggest mistake that most leaders make, especially when they're doing it for the first time, they're new at it?
I think people look at leadership in its most simple terms, which is getting you to do what I'm asking you to do, or what I think should be done. So it's a bit of an anomaly to use the FBI, but why not use that best case scenario? The FBI hires intelligent, creative, dedicated, honest people who are self-starters. As I mentioned, people don't have to be told to work the case, they want to. So here is this incredible group of geniuses, especially at their jobs. And I used to joke with friends who were supervisors, like, you have the easiest job in the world. Like, these people want to do their work. But leadership in that realm, what I saw was taking those willing and simply providing resources, occasionally a nudge. But if somebody is saying, I want to run up that hill, and that's what you want them to do, why would you spend any time talking with them about it or trying to convince them? They're going in that direction, and I'm thinking, let me get you water, let me get you good shoes, good backpack, whatever it is. And so leadership is getting the best out of well-intended people that are going in that direction already. So there has to be that ultimate decision maker, the one who has responsibility for what's happening. That's understood. And in the FBI, people respected that. But I've been under men who check in, every day, give me directions. And I'm like, look, man, I've been on longer than you have. I've worked more cases than you have. You should step aside and let me just go. So that's bad leadership. And good leadership comes from a boss that I had, and any conversation you had with him, he finished with, what else do you need? And that is, what resources can I give you, because you're already on track?
I love that point about the easiest job in the world. I feel like, because you're so right. Like, if you find the right people and you get the right team together and they've gelled really well and everyone's, genius in their own specialism or whatever, in whatever the context might be, that's the hard bit. And once you've done that, you're right. Like, if you get that bit right, leadership gets a lot easier, I think. Like, as easy as it ever can be. Everyone seems to have their own differences with that. And then I also don't really want to be saying leadership is easy. That feels like a self-defeating phrase for me to say.
Yeah. But leadership is easy, like, going to the dentist is easy, but people don't do it. Like, it's if you're making it harder, but your difficulty is convincing people to stop placing themselves in an important position. So by definition, you already are. You're the ultimate yes or no person. You're the one that has to guide and direct, but otherwise, your job should be easy. And with those, cast-offs, the stragglers who aren't the self-starters, they're not the geniuses, and you get those too. Well, then your job is to make them that, to get them there. Now that's different leadership. So I guess the hard part to it, maybe to emphasize, is how do you get that group of 10 that needs to be 15? How do you get 15 people like that instead of just a 10? How can they learn off the others?
Yeah. I think, it's the goal of leadership, isn't it? To make your own job easier, right? In the nicest possible way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. And I have to say, I've been quite fortunate in that at least 2 of the times I've been leading people, I sort of lucked into that exact situation. They needed very little leadership. Yeah.
Yeah. And, yeah. And then you get the praise for like how successful they are. Like, oh yeah, I'm just a good leader.
Yeah. I mean, I would have in a normal environment. Yeah. But anyway, let's not dwell on that. Perhaps, though, that indirectly leads into the next question, which is, if you could start your career over again, is there anything you would do differently?
Wow. In the FBI or the whole?
Your whole career.
No. I really enjoyed being a pastor. If I knew I could get into the FBI having applied earlier, I might have passed into this, but I learned to do good things. I mean, that was part of who I was. That's the girl I dated for 12 years, and then I met the love of my life. It's that type of situation where you go, well, you're in a wonderful marriage with a woman who's fantastic. Don't you regret dating that one girl though, before that? Like, no. There was a lot that I learned and I have taken away. So boy, I mean, the career that I had in the FBI, I mean, I wasn't prepared for it, but the FBI made me good. I took a few chances to do things that I thought were challenging to me to get onto a SWAT team. I was 43, 42 when I joined the team. Like, I'm 55, 56 years old, and there's these 30-year-old kids joining the team. I'm asking them what their mom's maiden name is because I might have gotten lucky with them at prom. These are men who could be my legitimate children, but I got to keep up with them and just have that experience. There is nothing I would change. It was great for me.
Fair enough. I sort of expected that answer, if I'm honest. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it's a sign. Well, it's a sign of 2 things. One, a life or a career well lived, well had, and then also, I guess, like the self-awareness, the maturity to sort of recognize, okay, yeah, it didn't always go well, but here's what I learned from that. I think that's a sign of great leadership as well. So another lesson there too.
So you're saying I'm mentally healthy? Wow. Okay, good.
Well,
good.
I mean, as far as I can tell, based on this hour conversation.
In the past hour. Thank you for your diagnosis, sir.
Yeah, and accepting the fact that I'm definitely not an expert. But
okay.
Further legal caveats will be rolling at the end of the show. Awesome. Okay, my favorite question now. This is the one that a lot of people struggle with, and others just have an instant answer, and it's the easiest question they've ever had in their lives. So we'll see. Maybe you'll be one of the first to fall between there somewhere in the grey area, but it's leadership heroes.
Leadership heroes.
So if you had to pick one person, but it can be literally anyone you could think of. So they could be alive, dead, past, present, real, fictitious, even if you like, but someone who, in your opinion, would perfectly embody leadership. Which person is that going to be for you, and why?
I mean, is it the Sunday school answer to say Jesus? My views of Christianity, of God, have developed over the years to where I'm still a believer. I'm not as certain of things that I used to be foolishly certain of before, but I still say that there's much that I could learn from the leadership of Christ. I mean, that's when people talk about servant leadership. Well, started with him. I mean, that's the idea. Those among you who want to lead must first be servants. And I think that's the type of power, quiet power and influence that I sought to have. There was definitely times where I was calling the shots. I was telling people what to do. And then other times, as we mentioned, I knew that my leadership was not upfront and loud. It was just individual to influence, not in an egotistical way where I think I've got something to teach you here, son, but just to help people through. And the confirmation of that for me was, I don't think there's been as many agents in the FBI who've had other agents come to them, big tough people, and cry and say, can I talk to you? And I felt so good about that, because that meant they thought I was safe. And no matter how many pranks or jokes I'm playing, it still came through that Eric's a safe person and he might be able to assist me in this. So as well as I try to work that in my life, I would love to learn more from Jesus as a person. I can read about him, I can study, but that would be a great place. I'm apologizing if that seems like too much of a pastor's answer.
No, not at all. It's surprisingly, well, maybe not surprisingly, but it's quite a common answer, actually. And the servant leadership angle definitely is. And I think it's, I mean, it's hard to argue with the example. Whether you believe in him or not, like the story and
Sure.
the lesson is still there, isn't it? And I say that every time, and it's a bit of a broken record now. But it's true. Like, there are things you can learn from the book, I suppose.
Yeah. And then again, considering how much you believe in the book, I think there would be so much to learn from Jesus just as a person. So undeniable as to that leadership, you had a dozen men change the world off of him. That's remarkable. I know we're getting into, this is going to take us into a little different area, but my oldest graduated from college a few years ago. At the commencement, one of the student speakers said, I'm going to change the world. And I thought to myself, no, you're not. Because if you think of it, like if we sat down and spent time, and depending on how you define it, there have been in the past 100 years, let's say 30 people, again, depending on how you find it, who have changed the world. It's a small number. Define it looser, now you've got 1,000, whatever it is. However, those who have changed the world ruin what's important to them. You cannot change the world and be good for your family. You cannot change the world and have a community. You are dedicated to that bigger cause, and maybe God or the universe calls you to that. But I am called to be kind and supportive to my family, to my extended family, and to my community and colleagues and friends. And if I'm busy changing the world, I am not taking care of what's been entrusted to me. So Jesus was able to build into these men. They changed the world. I don't know about the family issue, but I mean, that's a remarkable thing that, I think I could learn quite a bit from.
Definitely. I think the other thing I'd add there to the student and the speech, without knowing what else that person said, at least in the modern age, and I'm going to sound like a horribly grumpy old man when I say this now, but change isn't always good. So those 30 or 1,000 people, like some examples were popping into my mind. So let's take Steve Jobs. Like, he's a really well-known one.
Absolutely. First one you think of, Steve Jobs, right.
Hard to argue that he didn't change the world. Was it a good change, though? Like, we're glued to our phones. It's opened the avenue to all these other technologies that I think are harming society in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It was great for him. Great for people who work for him. Great for his company. Don't know if it was great for the world.
Is he divorced? Was his daughter close to him? No. Yes and no. I mean, so he did that at the expense of, okay, well, I've given up family for that. And again, what's another way to say someone's going to change the world? I'm going to be an influencer.
I'm not a fan of that word either, to be fair.
Yeah, right. So
I would argue whether influencers change the world or change anything, in fact.
Well, right.
But
No, I mean, they change the world in the same way that, I say, hey, I peed in the punch bowl, like,
I might change somebody's world.
Yeah, exactly. I influenced the punch.
Oh dear. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Eric, I've really enjoyed this conversation. You've been very, very generous with your stories. Thank you so much for being with us. One more small question I will ask you, because I'm sure everyone in the audience is desperate to know the answer to this one. When's the book coming out, and where can we get a copy of it?
So it is scheduled to come out in October as it stands, where my wife's company, Weaving Influence Press, recently began publishing books too. They've been marketing authors, and then they say, well, why we build websites, we promote people, why are we pushing them off to somebody else? So now they are publishing. I am set to be the third client that gets the book published. However, now we're also in talks with a traditional publisher. It is what I refer to as a too many girlfriends problem, where it's difficult, but it's a good kind of difficult, where that may be put off. So we'll see how that goes. But as it stands, set to be coming out in October. And if people want to follow along in case things change or see when the book does drop, they can go to my website, which is preachertobreacher.com. Yeah, that's pretty good.
That's pretty good, yeah.
That's pretty
cool.
good. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I will pop that link down in the show notes for everyone to find it easily. And that's all we've got time for, Eric. Thank you again so much. Have a great rest of your day, and best of luck with the book publishing.
Thanks very much, David. It's been a pleasure.
Eric, thank you so much for today. You're very generous, very kind with your knowledge, your experience, and of course your time with that conversation as well. Really enjoyed it. Learned loads as well. I'm sure the audience did too. And to the listener, to the viewer, if you want to know more about Eric, if you want to read that book, do check those show notes for the links. And if you are one of those new leaders, a first-time manager, you feel like you've been pushed in at the deep end and you're looking for some support on your leadership journey, perhaps some knowledge, some practical things that you can do today or tomorrow to be a better, more effective leader, do come along and join us at the Integrity Leaders online community. It is built for leaders just like you who are struggling to get to grips with their new role, who are working in technical or specialist-driven environments, and you just don't know where to start. You don't know what your next step should be. Do come along. The website is on the screen. It's in the show notes. Have a browse of the site. There's some useful information there for you as well. Hopefully, do have a go at the quiz, learn about your leadership archetype and or your leadership hero from the world of sci-fi, of course. And when you're ready, head back to the homepage and hit that green button to come and sign up for the Integrity Leaders community. As always, if you have questions, thoughts, feedback or comments, drop us a review or drop me a message on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for being with us this week. I hope you'll join me again next week for a conversation with Dr. Katie Trowbridge about how great leadership looks a lot like great teaching. It's curious, it's adaptable, it's focused on helping people feel seen, heard and trusted so that they can think boldly and do their best work. That's another really interesting conversation. I hope you'll be back for it. And until then, as always, be a leader, not a boss.